The scent of old paper and brewing coffee was Alara Vance's favorite perfume, a comfort woven into the very fabric of her existence. It clung to her clothes, her hair, even the worn leather armchair in the corner of the storyteller's nook, the independent bookstore she'd inherited from her grandmother in Havenwood Cove. Rain lashed softly against the large bay window, blurring the quaint street outside into an impressionistic painting of muted greens and grays. Inside, the world was amber-hued and hushed, a sanctuary. Alara ran a hand over the spine of a first edition, a treasured heirloom tucked away in a glass cabinet. Her grandmother Maeve had believed that every book held a whisper of the human heart, a secret waiting to be discovered by the right reader. Alara often felt those whispers, a quiet symphony of joy, sorrow, adventure, and love, echoing through the shelves. But lately, amidst the quiet hum of the espresso machine and the gentle turning of pages, she'd been hearing another whisper, a less poetic one, echoing the dwindling numbers in her ledger. The storyteller's nook was more than just a business. It was her legacy, her anchor in the world. Maeve had built it from the ground up, a haven for dreamers and readers in this small, picturesque coastal town. Alara had grown up among the towering shelves, her childhood soundtrack the rustle of pages and the murmur of contented customers. She knew every creak in the floorboards, every sunbeam that slanted just so through the window, illuminating dust motes dancing like tiny stars. She loved this place with a fierce, protective devotion, but devotion, she was discovering, didn't always pay the bills. Just need a little magic, she murmured to herself, polishing the antique cash register with a soft claw. Magic, or perhaps just a few more customers who appreciated the tangible beauty of a physical book over the cold efficiency of a screen. Havenwood Cove was charming, but it was also small, and the younger generation seemed to prefer their stories delivered digitally. A gust of wind rattled the window panes, and Alara glanced out, watching the rain intensify. It was a perfect day for reading, for curling up with a mug of something warm and getting lost in another world. She hoped someone else felt the same. The bell above the door chimed, a soft, welcoming sound, and Alara straightened, a smile automatically gracing her lips. A man stood just inside, shaking droplets from a dark, practical umbrella. He was tall, with broad shoulders encased in a charcoal gray coat, and his hair, the color of rich earth, was slightly damp, curling appealingly at the temples. His eyes, when they met hers, were a startling shade of deep blue, like the ocean on a stormy day, intense and remarkably observant. He wasn't from Havenwood Cove, Alara knew immediately. She knew almost everyone, or at least recognized them. This man was new, a stranger, and something about his quiet presence immediately drew her attention, a subtle hum beneath the surface of the bookstore's usual tranquility. "Welcome," Alara said, her voice soft but clear. "Can I help you find anything? Or perhaps get you a coffee?" He nodded, a brief, almost imperceptible dip of his head. "Coffee would be good. Black." His voice was low, a rumbling baritone that seemed to fit the stormy weather outside. "And I'm just browsing for now." "Of course." Alara moved behind the counter, her hands moving with practiced ease to grind the beans. She noticed he didn't immediately start pulling books from shelves. Instead, he simply stood, taking in the space, his gaze lingering on the worn spines, the comfortable armchairs, the subtle details she loved so much. There was an appreciation in his eyes, a quiet understanding that warmed her, a stark contrast to the polite indifference she sometimes encountered. She handed him a steaming mug, the rich aroma of coffee filling the air. "That'll be $3.50. He produced a crisp $5 bill, his fingers brushing hers as she took it. His skin was warm, a fleeting touch that left a surprising tingle. "Thank you." He found an empty armchair in a quiet corner, near the large window, and settled in, taking a slow, deliberate sip of his coffee. He didn't pull out a phone, didn't open a laptop. He just sat, watching the rain, occasionally glancing around the shelves, a picture of quiet contemplation. Alara found herself stealing glances at him throughout the afternoon. He seemed utterly at peace, a man content with simply existing in the moment. It was a rare quality, she thought, in a world that always demanded more, faster. He stayed for nearly 2 hours, finishing his coffee, and then, just as the rain began to ease, he rose. "Thank you," he said, approaching the counter once more. "This is a beautiful place." His compliment, delivered with such sincerity, brought a genuine blush to her cheeks. "Thank you. My grandmother started it. It's been here for generations." I can tell, he replied, his eyes crinkling at the corners in what might have been a nascent smile. It has soul. He paused, then added, Do you happen to have a copy of The Unseen Path by Alistair Finch? Ilara's eyebrows rose in surprise. Alistair Finch was an obscure, almost forgotten author of philosophical essays and poetry from the early 20th century. Alistair Finch? She repeated, delighted. I think I might. It's a rare one. Let me check the back. She disappeared into the labyrinthine storage room, a place filled with stacks of forgotten treasures. The scent of dust and aged paper even stronger here. After a few minutes of searching, her fingers brushed against a slim, cloth-bound volume. Aha! She exclaimed, pulling it out. I knew I remembered seeing it. Maeve was a big fan of his. She believed he saw the world in a way others couldn't. She brought it out to him, carefully cradling the book. It was in remarkably good condition, its cover a faded forest green. It's a first edition, actually. A little worn, but loved. His eyes lit up, a subtle but profound change in his usually reserved expression. He reached out, his touch reverent as he took the book from her. Remarkable, he murmured, turning it over in his hands. I've been searching for this for years. Most copies were lost in the war. Maeve had a knack for finding hidden gems, Ilara said, feeling a surge of pride in her grandmother's legacy. She always said the right book finds its way to the right person. He looked up, his blue eyes meeting hers, and this time, the smile was unmistakable. A slow, gentle curve of his lips that transformed his face. Perhaps she was right. He paid for the book, a generous amount that spoke to his appreciation for its rarity, and then, with another nod, he turned to leave. I'm Liam, by the way, he said, just before stepping out into the fading light. Liam Thorne. Ilara Vance, she replied, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. It was lovely to meet you, Liam. He offered one last brief, charming smile, and then the bell chimed again, marking his departure. Ilara watched him walk away, his figure disappearing into the twilight, a copy of The Unseen Path tucked carefully under his arm. The quiet of the bookstore felt different now, imbued with a new, subtle energy, a lingering whisper of curiosity. Over the next few days, the memory of Liam Thorne lingered like the scent of wood smoke after a fire, subtle, comforting, and utterly intriguing. Ilara found herself thinking about his quiet intensity, the unexpected warmth of his smile, the way he'd looked at her grandmother's book. It was a fleeting encounter, she told herself, just another customer. But her heart, a secret romantic at its core, knew better. Then, 3 days later, he returned. The rain had cleared, leaving behind a crisp, sun-drenched morning, and the bookstore was pleasantly busy. Ilara was explaining the difference between single-origin and blend coffee beans to Mrs. Henderson, a local artist who painted seascapes, when the bell above the door chimed. Liam Thorne. He was dressed similarly, in dark, well-fitting clothes, but today he carried no umbrella. His presence still filled the room, quiet, yet commanding. He gave her a small, acknowledging nod, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips, and made his way directly to the coffee counter. Morning, Ilara, he said, and the sound of his voice speaking her name sent a surprising shiver down her spine. Black coffee, please, and do you have any scones today? Morning, Liam, she replied, her voice a little breathier than usual. We do, fresh out of the oven, blueberry and lemon. Perfect. Lemon, please. He leaned against the counter, watching her prepare his order, his gaze steady and warm. So, how was The Unseen Path? She asked, handing him his coffee and a warm scone wrapped in parchment paper. He took a bite of the scone, his eyes closing for a moment in apparent enjoyment. Excellent, just as profound as I remembered. Thank you for finding it. My pleasure, she said, feeling a genuine delight. Alistair Finch isn't exactly a bestseller these days. No, he agreed, a faint amusement in his voice. But some stories, some ideas, are meant to be found, not chased. He paused, then added, I'm staying in one of the cottages by the old lighthouse. I'm an architect, taking a sabbatical. Havenwood Cove seemed like the perfect place to clear my head. It's a wonderful place for that, Ilara said, her curiosity piqued. A sabbatical? From what? A high-pressure job? A difficult situation? She resisted the urge to pry. Lots of quiet corners for contemplation. Indeed. he said, his gaze sweeping around the bookstore. And yours is the quietest and most welcoming. He found his usual armchair and settled in, the morning light illuminating the faint stubble on his jaw, the thoughtful lines around his eyes. He unfolded a newspaper he'd brought with him, but she noticed he didn't immediately bury his face in it. Instead, he took another sip of coffee and simply watched the world unfold around him, his presence a comforting anchor in the bustling morning. He began to come in most mornings. Sometimes he'd bring a notebook, filling its pages with what Ilara imagined were architectural sketches or intricate plans. Other times, he'd simply read, choosing a different book from the shelves each day, often an obscure classic or a volume of poetry that spoke to her grandmother's eclectic taste. He was always quiet, always observant, and always offered a genuine smile and a few kind words before he left. Ilara found herself looking forward to his visits. The bookstore, which she loved fiercely, had often felt like a solitary pursuit. Her friends, mostly fellow Havenwood Cove natives, had lives bustling with families and careers that didn't involve the quiet contemplation of literature. Liam's presence, though largely unspoken, filled a space she hadn't realized was empty. He was a kindred spirit, a fellow appreciator of quiet beauty and profound thoughts. One particularly blustery afternoon, a sudden storm rolled in, trapping a handful of customers, including Liam, within the nook's cozy confines. The power flickered, then died, plunging the store into a soft, unexpected darkness, illuminated only by the gray light from the windows and the faint glow of Ilara's emergency lantern. A collective gasp went through the room, quickly followed by nervous chatter. "Don't worry," Ilara announced, her voice calm despite the sudden jolt of adrenaline. "We have plenty of candles and a backup generator for the espresso machine. Just a little adventure." She started lighting tall, beeswax candles she kept for such occasions, their warm glow chasing away the gloom, casting dancing shadows on the book-lined walls. Liam rose from his armchair, his silhouette tall and reassuring in the flickering light. "Can I help, Ilara?" he offered, his voice a steady presence in the quiet. "Actually, yes," she said, grateful for his initiative. "The generator is in the back storeroom. It just needs to be kicked on. I can show you." Together, they navigated the shadowed aisles, the scent of old books and beeswax heavy in the air. In the storeroom, Ilara pointed to the small, sturdy generator. "It's usually pretty straightforward, just a few buttons." Liam knelt, his strong hands moving with practiced efficiency. There was something comforting in his focused silence, the way his brows furrowed in concentration. Within minutes, the generator sputtered to life, a low hum filling the space, and then, with a triumphant whir, the lights in the main part of the bookstore flickered on, banishing the shadows. A cheer went up from the customers, and Ilara felt a wave of relief. "Thank you, Liam," she said, turning to him, her eyes shining with gratitude. "You're a lifesaver." He stood, dusting off his hands. "Glad to help. I've done my fair share of fieldwork, so generators aren't entirely new to me." He gave her that slow, warm smile, and in the sudden brightness, she noticed a faint scar above his left eyebrow, a small detail that hinted at a life lived beyond the quiet sanctuary of Havenwood Cove. "Fieldwork?" she prompted, her curiosity getting the better of her. He chuckled softly. "Yes, architecture isn't always confined to an office. Sometimes it involves dusty construction sites, old buildings that need restoration, or even, occasionally, remote locations where the power grid is unreliable." "That sounds fascinating," she admitted, envisioning him in a hard hat, surveying grand structures. It was a stark contrast to his quiet, contemplative demeanor in her bookstore, and yet, it fit. He had a grounded, capable air about him. He shrugged, a hint of something unreadable in his eyes. "It has its moments, but I'm enjoying the change of pace here. The quiet, the stories." His gaze met hers, and for a moment, the air between them seemed to crackle, filled with unspoken things. It was more than just gratitude. It was a deeper connection, a shared understanding that went beyond words. It was a whisper, she realized, a quiet recognition of something significant. As the days turned into weeks, their conversations deepened, moving beyond books and coffee to shared observations about Havenwood Cove, musings about life, and even tentative glimpses into their pasts. Ilara found herself opening up to him in ways she hadn't to anyone else in years. She told him about her grandmother, about the challenges of keeping an independent bookstore alive, about her own dreams of perhaps one day writing a story of her own, though she'd never dared to put pen to paper. Liam listened with an attentiveness that made her feel truly seen, truly heard. He shared less about his own past, always deflecting gently when she veered too close to personal questions about why he'd taken a sabbatical or what specifically he was clearing his head from. He spoke of cities he'd worked in, buildings he'd admired, but always with a slight reserve, as if a part of his story remained carefully guarded. Yet, there were moments, subtle glances, a prolonged hand brush over the counter, a shared laugh over a particularly quirky customer that spoke volumes. Elara found herself anticipating his arrival each morning, her heart doing a little flutter when the bell above the door chimed and she saw his tall figure silhouetted against the light. His presence had become an indispensable part of her day, a quiet comfort she hadn't realized she was missing until now. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped towards the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues, Liam was her last customer. He was reading a worn copy of Robert Frost's poetry, his expression thoughtful. The bookstore was hushed, filled with the warm, golden light of dusk. "It's beautiful out there tonight," Elara said softly, leaning against the counter, watching the colors deepen over the ocean visible from the window. Liam looked up, following her gaze. "It is. Makes you want to walk down to the beach, doesn't it?" "It does," she agreed, a wistful smile on her face. "But I have to close up." He closed the book, placing it gently on the table beside him. "I could wait, if you wouldn't mind the company." Her heart gave a little leap. I wouldn't mind at all," she said, a warmth spreading through her. "Give me 15 minutes. She busied herself with the closing routine, her movements efficient, but her mind buzzing. This was new, this unspoken invitation, this subtle shift in their comfortable routine. When she finally locked the front door and stepped out into the cool evening air, Liam was waiting for her on the small porch, his hands tucked into his pockets, a quiet smile on his face. "Ready?" he asked, his voice low and inviting. "Ready?" she breathed, and together they walked towards the beach, the last embers of sunset painting the sky above them in shades of rose and violet. The air was crisp, carrying the salty tang of the ocean, and the rhythmic crash of waves grew louder with every step. They walked in companionable silence, the only sounds the crunch of their shoes on the gravel path and the distant cries of gulls. Elara felt a sense of ease with Liam that was both familiar and exhilarating. It was as if she'd known him forever, and yet every moment with him felt like a new discovery. As they reached the beach, the sand cool beneath their feet, the last sliver of sun dipped below the horizon, leaving behind a breathtaking expanse of twilight. The ocean stretched out before them, vast and mysterious, mirroring the shifting colors of the sky. "It's moments like these," Elara said, her voice barely a whisper, "that make all the struggles of keeping the Nook afloat worth it. This place, it's magic." Liam stood beside her, his shoulder brushing hers, his presence solid and comforting. "It is," he agreed, his voice equally soft. "And so is your Nook, Elara. It's a place where stories live and where new ones begin." He turned his head, his blue eyes meeting hers in the fading light, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. "Like ours, perhaps." The words hung in the air, a gentle declaration, a question, a promise. The waves continued their endless rhythm, a soothing backdrop to the sudden exhilarating thrumming of her heart. Elara looked at him, truly looked at him, and for the first time, she felt a whisper of something truly profound, something that stretched far beyond the pages of any book. It was a whisper of a future, unfolding right here, on this quiet beach, under the vast, darkening sky. And she was ready to listen. Elara's breath hitched, a soft intake of the salty air. His eyes in the fading light held a depth she hadn't noticed before, a quiet intensity that matched the sudden clamor in her chest. The word, perhaps, was a fragile, beautiful thing, a seed dropped into fertile ground waiting to sprout. It wasn't a question demanding an immediate answer, nor a declaration that needed to be met with one. It was an invitation. An open door to a conversation that stretched beyond words, into the realm of unspoken possibilities. "Perhaps," she echoed, her voice barely a whisper, yet resonating with a newfound courage. A small, tentative smile bloomed on her face, and she watched as his lips curved in response, a slow, warm smile that reached his eyes and made them crinkle at the corners. It was a smile that promised patience, understanding, and a shared quiet joy. The last sliver of the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in strokes of lavender and deep rose, a final breathtaking flourish before the stars began to prickle through the velvet darkness. They stood there for a few more beats, letting the moment settle around them, a cocoon of shared understanding. The air grew cooler, carrying the scent of drying seaweed and the faint, sweet perfume of night-blooming jasmine from a nearby garden. "We should probably head back," Finn said eventually, his voice soft, breaking the spell gently. "Unless you fancy becoming part of the nocturnal beach ecology." Alara chuckled, a light, musical sound. "As tempting as that sounds, I think I'll stick to my bed for now. The sand fleas can be quite persuasive." He offered her his arm, a simple, natural gesture, and Alara found herself taking it without hesitation. His forearm was warm and firm beneath her fingertips. They began to walk, their steps synchronized, the crunch of their shoes on the sand a steady rhythm. The earlier tension, the unspoken longing, had dissipated, replaced by a comfortable intimacy that felt both new and strangely familiar. As they ascended the dune path, the lights of the small town of Seabrook began to twinkle below, a scattered handful of gems against the dark canvas of the land. The familiar sight was imbued with a fresh glow, as if seen through new eyes. "It's beautiful tonight," Alara murmured, tilting her head back to gaze at the nascent stars, which were now growing bolder, brighter. "It is," Finn agreed, his voice close, his gaze, she felt, resting on her. "Every night here holds something special, if you look close enough." They walked in comfortable silence for a while, the kind that didn't need filling, but rather nurtured a quiet connection. Alara felt a lightness in her step, a buoyant hope she hadn't realized she was missing until now. She stole a glance at Finn, his profile etched against the dim light, strong and reassuring. He seemed to carry a quiet strength, an anchor in the shifting tides of her emotions. When they reached the edge of town, the scent of wood smoke mingled with the salty air, and the distant sound of a dog barking echoed softly. They slowed as they approached her small cottage, its windows glowing with a warm, inviting light. "Thank you, Finn," Alara said, turning to face him on her porch, the light from her living room spilling out around them. "For the walk, for the conversation, for everything." He smiled, a genuine, open smile that made her heart give another little flutter. "My pleasure, Alara. Truly, I enjoyed it more than I can say." He paused, then added, his voice a little lower. Perhaps we could do it again soon? Tomorrow, maybe? For breakfast?" The word, perhaps again, a gentle echo, a soft thread weaving its way through their budding connection. Alara's smile widened. "I'd like that very much, Finn. What time?" "Say 8. I know a place that does excellent blueberry pancakes." "Blueberry pancakes," Alara repeated, a delightful anticipation bubbling up. "You have a deal." He gave her a slight nod, his eyes lingering on hers for a moment longer than necessary, a silent message passing between them. Then, with a soft, "Good night, Alara," he turned and walked down her path, disappearing into the shadows of the quiet street. Alara watched him go, a warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with the evening air. She stepped inside, the familiar comfort of her cottage embracing her, but tonight it felt different. Brighter, fuller d'Ortine. She touched her fingertips to her lips, a ghost of a smile playing there. The evening had been more than she could have ever imagined. It was a chapter she hadn't known she was waiting to write. The morning sun, bright and clear, filtered through Alara's lace curtains, pulling her gently from a dream filled with the rhythmic sound of waves and the quiet strength of a man's hand. She stretched, a contented sigh escaping her lips, and the memory of the previous evening washed over her. Finn.y. Blueberry pancakes. A blush warmed her cheeks. She dressed in a simple, comfortable sundress, choosing one in a soft seafoam green that matched the tranquil feeling in her heart. A quick glance in the mirror showed eyes that sparkling with a new light, and a smile that seemed to be permanently etched there. True to his word, Finn was waiting for her, outside the quaint little diner, the Salty Spoon, precisely at 8:00 Mom, 8:00 Worcester dark night. He looked fresh and rested, his dark hair a little disheveled in a charming way, and he was wearing a light blue linen shirt that brought out the color of his eyes. "Morning, Ilara," he greeted, his smile instant and warm as she approached. "Sleep well?" "Like a log," she replied, feeling a lightness in her step. "And you?" "Better than I have in a long time," he admitted, his gaze holding hers for a beat too long before he gestured towards the diner's entrance. The salty spoon was a local gem, bustling with the comforting clatter of cutlery and the murmur of conversation. The aroma of coffee, bacon, and, yes, blueberry pancakes hung deliciously in the air. They were seated at a small table by a window, bathed in the morning light. Over steaming mugs of coffee and plates laden with fluffy golden pancakes dotted with bursting blueberries, their conversation flowed easily. They talked about their childhoods. Ilara spent mostly in the company of books in a small town far from the sea, Finn's by the ocean, always tinkering with things, dreaming of boats. "So, you've always been drawn to the sea?" Ilara asked, cutting into a pancake. Finn nodded, a thoughtful look on his face. "Since I can remember, my grandfather was a fisherman, and he taught me how to tie knots before I could even properly write my name. There's something about the ocean, Ilara. It's vast, it's powerful, but it also holds so many secrets, so much beauty, and it's always changing, never the same twice." "Like a good story," Ilara mused, a soft smile playing on her lips. "Always unfolding, always revealing new depths." "Exactly," Finn said, his eyes lighting up. "You get it." "I think I'm starting to," she admitted. "I've always been drawn to stories, to the worlds within pages. The sea feels like a grand living story, doesn't it?" They finished their breakfast, lingering over their coffee, the warmth of their conversation as comforting as the meal itself. As they prepared to leave, Finn turned to her. "So, Ilara, I've told you a bit about my world. I'd love to see yours. Would you mind if I walked you back to Pages and Tides?" Ilara's heart gave another little leap. Introducing Finn to her bookstore, her sanctuary, her passion, felt like a significant step. It was inviting him not just into her life, but into the very heart of who she was. "I'd love that," she said, her voice soft with genuine pleasure. "It's not quite the grand living story of the sea, but it has its own quiet magic." As they walked through the sun-dappled streets, the morning air was crisp and invigorating. Seabrook was truly waking up, with shopkeepers setting out their wares and the cheerful greetings of neighbors echoing down the street. Ilara found herself pointing out little details: the best place for ice cream, the ancient oak tree in the town square, the quirky art gallery. Finn listened attentively, his gaze warm and engaged, making her feel as though every word she spoke held immense importance. When they arrived at Pages and Tides, the bell above the door jingled a familiar welcome. The bookstore, with its inviting blue facade and a window display featuring a vintage copy of Moby Dick, alongside a collection of pressed sea glass, looked particularly charming in the morning light. "Here we are," Ilara announced, a touch of pride in her voice as she pushed the door open. Finn stepped inside, and Ilara watched his reaction with a mixture of anticipation and a flicker of nervousness. It was a small space, cozy and overflowing with books, the air scented with paper, dust, and a hint of cedar from the old shelves. Sunlight streamed through the tall front windows, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the air and highlighting the spines of countless stories. His eyes swept slowly around the room, taking in the towering shelves, the comfortable armchairs tucked into reading nooks, the spiral staircase leading to a small loft, and the whimsical hand-painted signs. A look of genuine wonder settled on his face. "Wow," he breathed, his voice low. "Ilara, this is incredible. It's like stepping into another world. A truly beautiful world." A wave of relief and warmth washed over Ilara. His appreciation was palpable, and it meant more to her than she could have articulated. "Thank you," she murmured, her gaze meeting his. "It's my haven, my life's work, in a way." He began to wander slowly, his fingers trailing lightly over the spines of books, a gentle reverence in his touch. Ilara watched him, a quiet contentment settling in her heart. He paused at a section labeled Maritime Adventures, his smile widening as he picked up an old, leather-bound copy of H.T. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. "Jules Verne," he mused. "A classic. My grandfather used to read me snippets from this when I was a boy." "He's one of my favorites," Ilara confessed. His imagination was boundless. Finn put the book back carefully, then turned to her, his expression thoughtful. It's not just the books, Alara. It's the atmosphere. It feels loved, like every book has a story. And the space itself has one too. They spent the next hour simply being in the bookstore. Alara showed him her favorite reading nook, a velvet armchair tucked beneath a window overlooking a small, secret garden at the back. She explained her system for organizing the books, a slightly eccentric method that made perfect sense to her. Finn, in turn, shared stories of his own, sparked by the titles he saw. A memory of a childhood pet, a school trip, a whimsical dream. A customer, an elderly woman named Mrs. Gable, who was a regular, bustled in, her eyes twinkling as she spotted Finn. "Oh, Alara, dear, you have company. Good morning, young man." Alara introduced them, and Finn, with an easy charm, made Mrs. Gable feel instantly at ease. He even helped her find the latest cozy mystery she was looking for, pulling it from a top shelf with a graceful reach. Alara watched, a pang of something sweet and undeniable blossoming in her chest. He fit so naturally into her world. Later, after Mrs. Gable had departed with her new book and a satisfied smile, Finn turned to Alara. "You have a lovely way with people, Alara, and with books, obviously." She laughed softly. "It's easy when you love what you do, and the people who come here, they love books too. It's a shared passion." He nodded, his gaze lingering on her. "A shared passion. I like the sound of that." He paused, then his eyes twinkled. "So, speaking of passions, you've seen my world, in a way, through my stories. And now I've seen yours. What's next? A grand tour of Seabrook's boatyards?" Alara's eyes widened playfully. "Are you offering?" "Perhaps," he said, that familiar word, now laced with a playful invitation. "I could show you where I do my work. It's not as cozy as this, but it has its own kind of magic." The idea thrilled her. To see him in his element, surrounded by the tools of his craft, felt like another step deeper into the unfolding story they were creating together. "I'd love that, Finn. When? How about this afternoon? I usually work until late, but I could take a break around 3. We could grab a coffee first, then I can show you the ropes, so to speak." 3 it is, Alara confirmed, her smile radiant. The day, which had started with blueberry pancakes, was continuing to unfold in the most delightful way. The afternoon brought with it a gentle sea breeze, rustling the leaves of the trees outside, pages and tides. Alara closed the shop promptly at 2:30, a flutter of excitement in her stomach. She changed into comfortable jeans and a light sweater, tying her hair back to keep it from blowing in the wind. Finn met her at a small cafe down the street, its outdoor tables offering a perfect view of the harbor. The air was filled with the cries of gulls and the distant clang of rigging. "Ready for an adventure?" he asked, his eyes sparkling as he handed her a steaming mug of her favorite herbal tea. "Always," Alara replied, taking a grateful sip. "Especially when it involves the sea." He led her away from the bustling main street, down a quieter path that wound past a series of fishing boats docked along the pier. The smell of salt, diesel, and fresh fish grew stronger, a robust, honest scent that was distinctly Seabrook. They passed weathered sheds and stacks of lobster traps, each telling a silent story of hard work and resilience. Finally, they arrived at a large, unassuming building tucked away from the main thoroughfare. It didn't have a flashy sign, just a simple, hand-painted number on the door. "This is it," Finn announced, pushing open a heavy, sliding door. Alara stepped inside, and her breath caught. The workshop was a cavernous space, filled with the rich, earthy scent of wood and the faint tang of metal. Sunlight streamed through high windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air and casting long shadows across the floor. It was a symphony of textures and shapes, stacks of gleaming timber, tools meticulously arranged on pegboards, blueprints tacked to a wall, and in the center of it all, a magnificent half-finished wooden boat. It was a small yacht, its elegant hull taking shape, ribs of wood curving gracefully upwards like the skeleton of a great sea creature. The craftsmanship was exquisite, the wood grain polished to a soft sheen even in its unfinished state. "Oh, Finn," Alara whispered, her voice filled with awe. She walked slowly around the boat, her fingers hovering, wanting to touch, but not daring to disturb the perfection. "This is truly incredible. It's a work of art." Finn watched her, a quiet pride in his eyes. It's a passion project mostly. A custom build for a client who appreciates traditional craftsmanship. I like to think of it as bringing a dream to life, one plank at a time. He spent the next hour explaining his process, his voice animated with enthusiasm. He showed her different types of wood, explained the intricacies of joinery, and demonstrated how he used various tools, his hands moving with a practiced grace that was mesmerizing to watch. Elara listened intently, fascinated by the meticulous detail and the sheer artistry involved. She saw the same dedication and love he put into his craft that she poured into her bookstore. "Do you ever get tired of it?" she asked, watching him plane a piece of wood with smooth, rhythmic strokes. The precision, the repetition. He paused, looking up at her, a faint smudge of sawdust on his cheek. "Never. Each piece of wood has its own character, its own challenges. And seeing something beautiful emerge from raw materials, knowing it will eventually glide across the water, there's a deep satisfaction in that. It's a conversation between me and the wood, between me and the sea, in a way." Elara smiled, understanding perfectly. Like a conversation between a reader and a book. The story unfolds, and you become a part of it. He grinned. "Exactly. You really do get it." He wiped his hands on a rag, then gestured towards a small, cluttered workbench. "Come, let me show you something else." He cleared a space, revealing a smaller, more delicate project, a meticulously crafted model of a tall ship, still in its early stages. It was breathtaking in its detail, even at this miniature scale. "This is for my own collection," he explained, his voice softer now. "A replica of an old clipper ship. It's where I experiment with new techniques, or just unwind after a long day." Elara picked up a tiny, intricately carved piece of wood, a miniature mast. "It's so delicate. How do you have the patience?" "Patience is a virtue, especially when you're dealing with the sea," he said, his eyes twinkling. "And besides, it's not really patience when you love what you're doing, is it?" As the afternoon wore on, a comfortable silence settled between them, punctuated by the gentle sounds of Finn's work and Elara's quiet observations. She found herself watching him, admiring the focused intensity in his eyes, the strength in his hands, the quiet passion that radiated from him. She felt an increasing sense of ease, a feeling of belonging in this space, in his company. Eventually, the light began to soften, signaling the approach of evening. Finn put down his tools, wiping his hands clean. "Thank you for showing me this, Finn," Elara said, genuinely moved. "It's truly inspiring." "My pleasure, Elara," he replied, his gaze warm. "I wanted you to see a piece of my world, and I'm glad you did." He paused, then added, "It's getting late. How about we pick up something for dinner? There's a great little place that does the best fish and chips, and we could eat them by the water." Elara's smile was instant. "That sounds perfect." They walked back towards the harbor, the golden hour light painting everything in a warm, ethereal glow. The air was cooler now, carrying the promise of a peaceful evening. As they strolled, a comfortable rhythm fell into place, their shoulders occasionally brushing, a silent language of growing connection. Over crispy fish and chips, eaten from paper wrappers on a bench overlooking the tranquil harbor, they talked about their day. Elara recounted a humorous incident with a particularly demanding cat who frequented her bookstore, demanding attention and specific literary genres. Finn shared a story about a mischievous seagull who often tried to steal his lunch. Laughter, light and easy, punctuated their conversation. As darkness fully descended, painting the sky in deep indigos and purples, Elara felt a profound sense of contentment. This day, like the one before, had unfolded with an effortless grace, each moment building on the last, deepening their understanding of each other. She had seen Finn the thoughtful conversationalist, Finn the charming host, Finn the passionate craftsman. And he had seen her in her element, in her haven, and now in the quiet, simple joy of a shared meal. When they eventually walked back to her cottage, the moon was a sliver in the sky, casting a soft silvery glow. The street was quiet, the town settling into its nighttime slumber. "Thank you again, Finn," Elara said, pausing at her porch. "This has been a wonderful day." "It has," he agreed, his voice a low rumble. He hesitated for a moment, then reached out, his fingers gently brushing a stray strand of hair from her cheek. His touch was light, feather soft, yet it sent a shiver of warmth through her. "Elara," he began, his voice dropping slightly. I feel like I've known you longer than just these past few days. Is easy with you." Alara's heart thrummed in response. "I feel it too, Finn," she confessed, her gaze unwavering, searching his. "It's a wonderful kind of easy." His thumb gently traced the curve of her jawline, sending pleasant tingles down her spine. The air between them crackled with an unspoken energy, a promise of something deeper, something beautiful. He leaned in, slowly, his eyes questioning, seeking her permission. Alara didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned in slightly too, her breath catching in her throat. His lips met hers, soft and tentative at first, a gentle exploration. It was not a kiss of fiery passion, but one of tenderness, of a quiet, profound understanding. It was a kiss that tasted of salt and wood, of shared laughter and unspoken dreams. It was a promise, a gentle affirmation of all the perhapses that had hung in the air between them. When they finally parted, it was only by inches, their foreheads still resting against each other. Alara's eyes were closed, her heart pounding a joyful rhythm against her ribs. When she opened them, Finn's eyes were open too, gazing at her with an expression of such warmth and affection that it took her breath away. "Good night, Alara," he whispered, his voice husky. "Good night, Finn," she replied, her voice equally soft, almost a sigh. He straightened, a small, lingering smile on his face, and then, with a final tender squeeze of her hand, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the moonlit street once more. Alara watched him go, a sense of wonder filling her. She touched her fingers to her lips again, the lingering warmth of his kiss a sweet echo. The day had been a revelation, a journey into Finn's world, and a deeper journey into the landscape of her own heart. She felt cherished, understood, and utterly, gloriously alive. The quiet magic of Seabrook, of her bookstore, of the sea, had found a new resonance, a new melody. And she knew with a certainty that settled deep in her soul that this was just the beginning of their story. The pages were still turning, and she was eager to read what came next. The quiet hum of the night air seemed to carry the echo of Finn's kiss, a sweet promise whispered on the breeze. Alara floated through the rest of her evening in a blissful haze, the scent of sea salt and pine from their walk still clinging faintly to her clothes. Sleep came easily, filled with sun-drenched memories of laughter and the solid, comforting presence of Finn beside her. The next morning, the bookstore felt brighter, the familiar scent of old paper and fresh coffee, imbued with a new kind of magic. Alara found herself humming as she shelved new arrivals, her gaze drifting frequently to the window, half expecting, half hoping to see Finn's truck pull up. She felt a lightness in her step, a joyful anticipation that had been missing from her life for far too long. Her phone buzzed, and her heart did a little flutter kick. It was Finn. "Thinking of you, Alara. Coffee sometime this morning?" "My treat." And a smile blossomed on her face. "Ibade there in 20. Can't resist a good coffee, especially when it's your treat." 1. She practically skipped to the little cafe down the street, her reflection in shop windows showing a woman radiating an inner glow. Finn was already there, nursing a steaming mug, his eyes crinkling at the corners when he saw her. He rose, pulling out a chair for her, a gesture that felt both old-fashioned and perfectly natural. "Good morning, Alara," he said, his voice a warm rumble. "You look incandescent." She laughed, a genuine, unburdened sound. "And you, Finn, look like you've been up since dawn chasing the perfect light." He grinned. "Guilty. Caught a spectacular sunrise over the cliffs, but I confess, my thoughts kept drifting from the lens to other things." His gaze held hers, direct and tender, making her blush. They talked easily about their morning, about the subtle shift in the light over Seabrook, about a particularly tricky plot twist in a book Alara was reading. There was an effortless rhythm to their conversation, a comfortable back and forth that felt like coming home. As they finished their coffee, Finn reached across the table, his fingers lightly tracing the back of her hand. "Alara," he began, his voice softer, "I want to be clear about something. What happened yesterday? It wasn't just a moment. For me, it was a beginning. And I want to see where it goes, if you do too." Her heart swelled. "I do, Finn. More than you know." His thumb stroked her skin. "Good. Because I have a feeling where it goes is going to be somewhere extraordinary. Over the next few weeks, their story unfolded like a beautifully written novel. Their days were filled with stolen moments, impromptu coffee dates, long walks along the beach as the tide pulled back, shared meals at Finn's cozy cottage, or Ilara's apartment above the bookstore. Their evenings often ended with Finn curled up in one of the bookstore's armchairs, a book in his lap, while Ilara tidied shelves, or with them sharing stories under the vast, star-dusted Seabrook sky. Ilara learned about Finn's past as a nomadic photographer, chasing stories and light across continents. He spoke of ancient ruins, bustling markets, and the quiet dignity of people in remote villages. But there was a wistfulness in his voice when he described Seabrook, a sense of having found something he hadn't known he was looking for. "It's funny," he'd said one evening, looking out at the moonlit ocean from her window. "For years I sought out the dramatic, the exotic. But here, in the quiet beauty of Seabrook, with its familiar rhythms, I found a peace I never knew I craved." He, in turn, learned about her love for books, her quiet strength, and the subtle ways she navigated the world. He saw the flicker of old pain in her eyes sometimes, a shadow that still hinted at a past heartbreak she rarely spoke of directly. He never pushed, but he was always there, a steady, reassuring presence, his hand warm on her back, his eyes full of understanding. One rainy afternoon, Finn found Ilara curled up with a particularly poignant novel, tears glistening in her eyes. He sat beside her, gently taking the book from her hands. "Have you read?" he murmured, his thumb brushing a tear from her cheek. She nodded, a soft sigh escaping her lips. It's about second chances, and how terrifying it can be to open your heart again after it's been broken." He held her gaze, his eyes mirroring a depth of emotion she was coming to cherish. "Ilara," he said softly, "everyone deserves a second chance at happiness. And fear is just a sign that something is truly important, worth fighting for." His words resonated deep within her. She realized then that while Finn understood her love for stories, he was also helping her write her own, a new chapter filled with courage and hope. As autumn deepened, bringing with it crisp air and fiery sunsets, their relationship deepened too. They shared vulnerabilities, fears, and dreams. Ilara told him, haltingly, about her fiancé who had left her years ago, a week before their wedding, leaving her shattered and wary of commitment. She described the slow, painful process of rebuilding her life, of finding solace in books, and eventually, in Seabrook. Finn listened without interruption, his hand holding hers. When she finished, a quiet strength radiating from her despite the tremor in her voice, he squeezed her hand. "I'm so sorry you went through that, Ilara. That kind of betrayal, it leaves scars." He paused, his gaze thoughtful. "But it also shows incredible resilience, to have healed and built this life for yourself, to be able to open your heart again, even a little." "It's terrifying, Finn," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "Sometimes I feel like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff again, and I'm afraid to fall." He met her gaze, his eyes earnest. "And I'm telling you, Ilara, I'll be there to catch you, every single time. I'm not going anywhere." His sincerity washed over her, a balm to old wounds. She believed him. She truly did. A few weeks later, a small challenge arose. Finn was offered an exciting photography assignment, a 6-week expedition to photograph ancient ruins in Peru. It was the kind of job he used to jump at, the kind that had defined his life for years. He told Ilara about it over dinner, his voice tinged with a complex mix of excitement and apprehension. Ilara felt a familiar knot tighten in her stomach. 6 weeks. Halfway across the world. It was exactly the kind of thing that had led to her past heartbreak. A partner with a restless spirit, a call to adventure that pulled them away. She tried to keep her expression neutral, but she knew a shadow had fallen across her face. "It's a huge opportunity, Finn," she managed, her voice a little strained. He studied her, his brow furrowed. "It is, but I also just found you, Ilara. The thought of leaving, even for a few weeks, feels different now. Harder." Her heart ached with a mixture of fear and a fragile hope. He seemed different. He was considering Harvey. "You should go, Finn," she said, forcing a smile. "It's your passion. I wouldn't want you to miss out." "And what about us?" he asked, his gaze unwavering. 6 weeks is a long time. "We'll make it work," she insisted, perhaps a little too quickly. Emails, calls, we're not in the dark ages, are we? He didn't look convinced. He knew her better than that now. He could sense the tremor beneath her brave facade. Elara, he said gently, reaching for her hand. Tell me what you're really thinking. The dam broke. I'm scared, Finn, she confessed, her voice thick with unshed tears. I'm so scared that you'll go, and you'll remember how much you love that life, that freedom, and you won't want to come back to Seabrook. You won't want to come back to Waimea. His thumb stroked her knuckles, a comforting rhythm. Is that what he did? He asked softly, referring to her past fiancé. She nodded, tears finally spilling over. He said he needed to find himself. He went on a trip, and he never came back. Just a letter, and I was left picking up the pieces, feeling like I wasn't enough, like I couldn't hold someone's heart. Finn's grip tightened. He leaned forward, his eyes earnest and full of a love that both surprised and comforted her. Elara, look at me. I am not him. And you, my love, are more than enough. You are everything. He paused, taking a deep breath. I'm not going to lie. That life, the travel, it was a part of me for a long time. But coming to Seabrook, finding this quiet corner of the world, and more importantly, finding Sherry, shifted everything. My priorities have changed. But the ruins in Peru, she started, still battling her fears. Are incredible. Yes, he conceded. But a 6-week expedition isn't the same as a life of constant wandering. And my camera, he gestured to his backpack, usually filled with gear. It's been capturing more of Seabrook lately. More of Guige. I've been thinking of putting together a collection. Seabrook, a love story, and you, my dear Elara, are the central muse. Her heart gave a flutter. He was showing her, not just telling her. He was actively choosing her, choosing their life together. I want to go, Elara, he admitted. It's a passion, a part of who I am, but I also want to come back. To you, to Seabrook, and I want us to be strong enough, solid enough that a few weeks apart won't unravel what we've built. He paused, then added, a mischievous glint in his eye. And frankly, 6 weeks without your coffee, your laughter, your book recommendations. That's a challenge I'm not sure I'm ready for. She managed a watery chuckle. So you're saying you'd miss me more than the ancient world? Infinitely, he declared, his gaze unwavering. And if it helps, I could call you every day. Send you photos. And when I come back, I'll bring you a story, a treasure, and a heart full of love. His words, his honesty, chipped away at her fear, replacing it with a fragile, burgeoning trust. She saw the genuine conflict in him, the way he was weighing his passion against their nascent relationship, and the fact that he was choosing Guy Themin as the priority, even as he considered the trip, filled her with a profound sense of being cherished. Okay, she said, a new resolve settling in. Okay, Finn, go. But you better call, every day, and don't forget my treasure. He grinned, relief washing over his face. He pulled her into his arms, holding her close, her head resting against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. You got it, Elara, and I'll come back with 1,000 stories, but the best one will be the one we continue to write together. The next few weeks before Finn's departure were bittersweet. They savored every moment, every shared sunrise, every quiet evening. Elara helped him pack, making sure he had enough books to read. Finn filled her apartment with fresh flowers, leaving little notes hidden in her favorite novels. They talked for hours about their future, about opening Elara's heart fully, about Finn finding a balance between his wanderlust and his new roots. When the day finally came, Elara drove him to the small regional airport. The goodbye was difficult, a tender mix of longing and hopeful anticipation. As he hugged her tightly, he whispered, "Remember what I said. I'll be back, for you, for us." "I'll be here," she whispered back, tears welling in her eyes. But this time, they were tears of love, not fear. The 6 weeks that followed were a testament to the strength of their connection. Finn called every evening, his voice a comforting presence across continents. He sent breathtaking photos of the Peruvian landscape, of ancient stones bathed in golden light, but also small, intimate snapshots of his own quiet moments, always with a caption hinting at his longing for Seabrook and for her. Elara, in turn, shared stories from the bookstore, anecdotes about Seabrook's quirky residence, and details of her day, painting a picture of the life he was returning to. She found herself thriving, too. The fear of abandonment hadn't vanished entirely, but it was overshadowed by a burgeoning confidence in Finn's love and commitment. She realized she could handle time apart, that their love wasn't fragile, but resilient. She even started a small photography corner in her bookstore, displaying local artists' work, inspired by Finn's passion. The day Finn was due back, Alara was a bundle of nerves and excitement. She tidied her apartment, baked his favorite cookies, and dressed in the soft blue dress he loved. When his plane landed, she was waiting, her heart pounding a joyful drumbeat. He emerged from the gate, looking a little leaner, a little more tanned, but his eyes, when they met hers, were unmistakably hers. A wide, genuine smile spread across his face, and he practically ran towards her, dropping his backpack to pull her into a fierce, breathless embrace. "You're here," she murmured, burying her face in his shoulder, inhaling the familiar scent of him. "I told you I would be," he rumbled, his voice thick with emotion. He pulled back slightly, cupping her face in his hands, his thumbs stroking her cheeks. "God, I missed you, Alara." "I missed you too, Finn. So much." He kissed her then, a deep, soul-stirring kiss that tasted of adventure and homecoming, of absence and profound presence. It was a kiss that sealed their bond, reaffirming every promise, every shared dream. As they drove back to Seabrook, Finn recounted tales of his journey, of the incredible light over Machu Picchu, the vibrant culture of Cusco. But his gaze kept returning to her, to the familiar landscape of their town. "It's good to be home," he said, his voice imbued with a new depth of belonging. Over the next few months, their life together settled into a beautiful rhythm. Finn moved into the small apartment above the bookstore, bringing with him a sense of adventure and a quiet strength that complemented Alara's gentle nature. He set up a dark room in the spare room, the scent of chemicals occasionally wafting through the floorboards, a comforting reminder of his creative pursuit. He continued his photography, but now his focus was predominantly on Seabrook, capturing its ever-changing moods, its quirky residents, and the quiet magic of its everyday life. He even started volunteering at the local community center, teaching photography to aspiring artists. Alara's bookstore flourished. She hosted author readings, book clubs, and even collaborated with Finn on a Seabrook Through the Lens exhibition, pairing his stunning photographs with excerpts from local literature. The store became a hub of creativity and connection, a true reflection of Alara's generous spirit. Their love grew deeper, more rooted, like the ancient oak trees that dotted the Seabrook landscape. They faced small challenges together, a leaky pipe, a difficult customer, a momentary disagreement, and navigated them with open communication and unwavering support. Alara learned to trust completely, to let go of the last vestiges of her past pain, finding liberation in Finn's steadfast love. Finn, in turn, discovered a profound joy in settling down, in building a life with someone, realizing that true freedom wasn't about constant movement, but about finding a place and a person where his heart could truly belong. One crisp spring evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of rose and gold, Finn took Alara for a walk on their favorite stretch of beach. The air was cool, carrying the salty tang of the incoming tide. They walked hand in hand, their footsteps leaving temporary imprints on the wet sand. He stopped near a weathered piece of driftwood, pulling her gently to face him. The last rays of sunlight cast a golden glow on his face, illuminating the tenderness in his eyes. "Alara," he began, his voice soft but resonant. "Do you remember that day when we first met, and you told me you believed in stories that find their way back to themselves?" She smiled, a warmth spreading through her chest. "I do. And you asked me if I believed in happy endings. And you said you were starting to," she finished, her heart beginning to beat a little faster. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. He got down on one knee, right there on the sand, the waves gently lapping at their feet. "Alara Vance," he said, his voice thick with emotion, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "You are the most incredible woman I have ever known. You brought light back into my life, color back into my world. You taught me that home isn't a place on a map, but a feeling in my heart, a feeling that only exists with you." He opened the box, revealing a simple, elegant ring with a single, luminous pearl reminiscent of the sea that had brought them together. I don't want to just believe in happy endings anymore, Alara, he continued, his gaze unwavering. I want to live one, with you, every single day. Will you marry me? Tears streamed down Alara's face, tears of pure joy and overwhelming love. This was it. This was her second chance. Her perfect story. Her heart, once so guarded, was now overflowing, completely and utterly open. Yes, Finn, she choked out, her voice trembling. 1,000 times yes. He rose, sweeping her into his arms, spinning her around as the last sliver of sun disappeared below the horizon, painting the sky in a final glorious burst of color. He slid the ring onto her finger, the pearl gleaming softly against her skin, a symbol of their enduring love, born from the depths of Seabrook's quiet magic. Their wedding was a small, intimate affair held in the garden behind the bookstore, filled with the scent of blooming roses and old paper. Seabrook's residents, who had watched their love story unfold, celebrated with them, their warmth and joy radiating through the quaint town. Alara wore a simple, elegant dress, her grandmother's lace veil flowing behind her, and in her hand, a bouquet of wildflowers gathered from the cliffs. Finn, handsome in a charcoal suit, couldn't take his eyes off her, his camera forgotten for once, choosing instead to capture every moment in his heart. After the vows, after the laughter and the heartfelt wishes, as the sun began its descent, painting the sky in their signature, rose and gold, Finn led Alara to a quiet corner of the garden. I have one last story for you, he whispered, pulling a beautifully bound leather-covered book from a hidden spot. The cover was embossed with the title he had mentioned months ago, Seabrook, a love story. He opened it to the first page. Inside were his photographs, not just of the landscapes and residents of Seabrook, but of Alara. Candid shots of her laughing in the bookstore, reading by the window, walking on the beach, her face alight with joy. There were also images of Ithamaim together, moments he had somehow captured without her noticing, each one a testament to their journey, to their growing love. The captions were his own words, heartfelt declarations of love, promises, and shared memories. The final page was a blank space, bordered by a delicate illustration of a pearl. Below it, in his elegant handwriting, he had inscribed, "By the end is merely the beginning of the next chapter. And ours, my love, will be a timeless epic." Adore Mutal. Alara's eyes filled with tears again, but these were the happiest tears of her life. She traced the words, feeling the weight of the book, the weight of their shared history, and the boundless promise of their future. It's beautiful, Finn, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. It's the most beautiful story I've ever read. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her close, their hearts beating in perfect synchronicity. And we're going to keep writing it, Alara, every single day. As the evening deepened, and the first stars began to prick the twilight sky, Alara looked up at Finn, her new husband, her soulmate. The magic of Seabrook, of her bookstore, of the sea, had indeed found a new resonance, a new melody. It was the melody of a love that had bloomed from quiet hope, weathered the storms of doubt, and found its way home. The pages of their story were still turning, and Alara knew with a certainty that settled deep in her soul that their epic, their timeless, heartwarming love story had truly just begun. And she was eager, so incredibly eager, to read what came next.